Africa,
Africa, Africa, Africa,
screening. Africa,
Africa,
screening.
where the topics are. From the heart we retrace the echoing footsteps of our ancestors etched in the sands of time. This is Africa Screening, your channel for African illumination.
We search for from a place of greatness, our true history forgotten, now hidden by the sands of time, calling us to awaken to who we truly are, forgotten in the tears and mist caused by alien conquest after conquest. Oh, the motherland is calling us to remember who we really are,
not what we are told that we are. This is a new time for
Africa,
time of awakening,
time of remembrance.
like King Nebuchadnezzar.
When his time in the wild fields
Fulfilled, he lifted up his eyes,
and he remembered who he was,
that he was a king,
and his excellence,
and light returned to him.
and he was restored to his former glory.
Arise, Africa, you are a crouching lion.
Arise, Africa,
It is your time to roar.
arise, Africa,
It is your time to lunge.
arise, Africa.
Yeah, Africa, the land of the beginning, the ancient breadbasket of the world.
The secret envy of many nations. Do you know who you really are? Wanna know? The ancient greats. Do you know what you truly are? Incredible, untapped treasure beneath the dust upon which you tread.
Awake from the dust and shake yourself.
And sit down on your throne.
As we used to do in many of our African cultures, ladies welcome honored guests with a little dance. So that dance was for you. This is Africa Screening. You are welcome. Today, we bring you another interesting and thought-provoking episode. I am Mujira. On today's show, we ask an important question. Who gave our continent, Africa, its name? Without falling down the proverbial rabbit hole, we will go back in time to try and discover the true origin of the name given to this beautiful continent we call home. According to contemporary sources, the general consensus is that no single person or peoples named Africa. That to me sounded very odd. Surely every name has an origin. Someone or people must have given our motherland its name. All it did was pique my curiosity. I found it very intriguing. A name just doesn't appear out of nowhere and persist for hundreds and hundreds of years. There remains confusion as to who named Africa. Some sources cite the Romans, others the Greeks, and others the ancient Egyptians. Most historians agree that the continent gained its name from the Romans. However, there is no consensus among historians as to why the Romans and when they decided to call their provinces in North Africa the name Africa. The name Africa first appears in Western historical annals to refer to Carthage, low tribes of the North African maritime superpower that Rome conquered in the 2nd century BCE. This is now the general consensus among historians, signed and sealed, so to speak. I beg to differ, if I may, from the current scholarly consensus that our continent, Africa, got its name from foreign civilizations that rose and declined throughout the ages after being conquered and occupied many times by them. My theory is that The African continent was named by its ancient indigenous inhabitants. If one is to think, on the African continent existed an ancient superpower civilization that lasted thousands of years. These were the ancient Egyptians, who existed long before the conception of the Assyrian, Greek, Roman, Ottoman, or Arab empires that later conquered and occupied their land. I find it hard to believe that the ancient Egyptians would not have been able to give a name to the continent they inhabited, being that their civilization had charted the heavens and given names to the different constellations, and they even had records going back before the earth tilted on its axis. Keep in mind that the ancient Egyptian civilization was already hoary with age by the time the empires that were to conquer it in later times arose. Despite the fact that the star of the ancient Egyptian civilization was on the wane, it still stood as its various conquering empires rose and fell themselves, but then one after the other, they too declined or were themselves conquered. Ancient Egypt was the ultimate superpower of superpowers. Its civilization had been at the top from antiquity. Their records covered eons, when other civilizations, such as the Greeks, refer to a single flood having covered the earth. They spoke of multiple flood events having occurred upon the earth in the past, in its long existence. The ancient Egyptians held vast knowledge of many cyclical destructions on our planet. Plato, an ancient Greek philosopher, foundational thinker of the Western philosophical tradition, wrote in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias about Solon's visit to Egypt. Solon was a Greek statesman who visited ancient Egypt, and an old Egyptian priest tells him, "Oh, Solon, Solon, you Greeks are always children. There is not such a thing as an old Greek." On hearing this, Solon asked, "What do you mean by this saying?" The old priest replied, "You are young in soul, every one of you." This was how the ancient Egyptians regarded the Greeks, who are the fathers of Western civilization. The Western philosophy and thinking stems from the Greeks, who the ancient Egyptians regarded as children of yesterday. The ancient Egyptians were far superior in knowledge carried over from antiquity. The ancient Greeks were suitably impressed by the vast knowledge of the ancient Egyptians. They founded the most famous library of classical antiquity in Egypt, in the city of Alexandria, in order to study and harness the ancient Egyptian vast knowledge. The Library of Alexandria was the ancient world's greatest center of knowledge. I may be as bold as to say that the Greeks lit a torch of knowledge from ancient Egypt and carried it back to their homeland, Greece. The oldest, most important Greek oracle, according to Herodotus, was an Egyptian priestess referred to as the Black Dove. Herodotus, a Greek, revered as the father of history, wrote that this oracle was based in Dodona in Epirus, long before the more commonly known Oracle of Delphi, who later become more well known internationally. You may wonder why this discourse expanded this way. To me, it was imperative that I lay a firm foundation upon which to base my forthcoming theories. I theorize that the ancient Egyptians named their own continent, not the Europeans as is recorded in current history, because the ancient Egyptians were scholars extraordinaire who had vast, unsurpassed knowledge from antiquity. In our epoch dominated by Western civilization, there is only one kind of year, made up of 365 days of the Earth's rotation around the sun. They counted the 365 days year that we do, plus a 26,000 year. On the other hand, the ancient Egyptians had two types of years they observed and noted carefully for millennia. This 26,000 is not a celestial time. Like the Bible tells us 1,000 earthly years, it is just a day in heaven's time. This was also terrestrial time. The 26,000 earthly year, this is when there occurs an axial precessional shift of our planet. Hence, it is referred to as the 26,000 year wobble. This axial wobble of the Earth is very important because of the changes it brings upon our home planet. It shifts the position of the celestial poles and the timing of the equinoxes. As we are leaving the age of the fish in which Christianity flourished, just a little digression here. The fish symbol was the secret sign of the early Christians during the Roman persecution, and it also represented Lord Jesus Christ. We are now at the threshold of the Aquarian age, which marks a great spiritual shift in humanity. The 26,000-year wobble also caused climate changes over millennia. The ages change over a period of 2,000 years or just over within the 26,000 year. The fact that ancient Egyptians had records going back thousands of years is attested by such as the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh or the Indian Mahabharata that tells us about Emperor Bharata, who ruled for 27,000 years, after whom India was originally named Bharatavarsha. To many now, these antediluvian figures now seem like just ancient laws or myths, too incredible to be believed. But I do believe that the history of our planet in its entirety, all the way from the pre-Adamic races and their civilizations through the antediluvian era of our epoch, up until now, would be absolutely stonking fantabulos, leaving our jaws on the floor. This is why our human history on this planet fascinates me so much. From primordial times, our transience nature causes us to forget much. Of all that went before, this is what the ancient Egyptians tried to limit or control by keeping meticulous records over thousands of years. The Greek historian Herodotus detailed in his writings called Histories that the ancient Egyptians recorded their history both in writing and orally. He emphasizes how he gathered much information from their narrations, songs, and traditions. Later Greek writers like Diodorus Siculus also detailed in his Bibliotheca Historica his reliance on priestly narrations and songs for his history. The ancient Egyptians knew that over time, tangible history can be tampered with or destroyed by foreign invaders, or even worse, their descendants may forget how to read or write their hieroglyphic system of writing or their very language itself. Due to language evolution, which occurs to all human languages over thousands of years, especially after hundreds of years of foreign occupation or forced migration. In order to escape wars, famine, or plague outbreaks, refugee crises is as old as human history itself. This is why there occurs a peculiarity in many of our African cultures and languages. There are many aspects of our tribal traditions and dormant words we no longer understand. They now just appear like word isolates in our traditional narrations, songs, or proverbs. In my 15 years of research, I came across countless such words that no one understands anymore. The explanation I got was, well, that is from our ancient language. I said, hey, what is this? It is a more difficult version of what we speak now. I went bingo in my head, of course. Safe to say, whenever I visited, I really bugged the elders in my village, but really, they loved it. I rushed with those dormant words in my mother tongue to my hieroglyphics lexical dictionary, and boom, guess what? Join us in the next episode and find out why no one will tell me that Black Africans had nothing to do with the civilization of ancient Egypt. No more of that blah, blah. That blah, blah, blah.